And the question then begs, why are teachers being singled out?
What's the motive?
I reiterate that point, and I want us not to lose sight of it. This is very important. Remember, we're talking about, with all intents and purposes, a body which is designed to elevate, to empower, but also to be the guardians of the teaching profession. We speak passionately. In many circles, we hear talking about the professionalization of teaching. So how is that done by non-professionals? The general intent and purpose of the legislation and the policy-making apparatus, the board of the council is not truly representative of the sector and the professionals it seeks to regulate. We assert that there can be no regulation without effective representation. The underlying principles of this act, unfortunately, its regulatory functions are far too restrictive, punitive, and rather than being corrective, enabling, and empowering of what it is. And so, colleagues, it is important that we understand the battle that we're in. It is one of justice. It is one of fairness. It is one of equity.
That's right. Amen. Preach it, President, preach it.
And so let us look first of all at the composition of the Board of Governors as outlined in this bill. The composition of the board as proposed in the bill marginalizes educational practitioners. While the councils major many of the councils within the island, the major councils that we have, and we speak specifically of the medical, legal, nursing councils, when we look at their existing bodies, we see where 60% of their bodies is, that is the composition of individuals within the profession, at least. Now, the way in which ours is really structured, it is anywhere from around 90% in one iteration up to probably around 40%, depending on how you interpret it. And we'll give you more nuance around it. Because what we have seen, for instance, the nurses, with the Nurses Association, it is able to place 12 of the representatives on of the 15 on their council. And those are named by the bodies that represent nurses. Yeah. In our case, we are only allowed to call on 6. We can only appoint 6 of 31. And the question then begs, why are teachers being singled out?
What's the motive?
I reiterate that point, and I want us not to lose sight of it. This is very important. Remember, we're talking about, with all intents and purposes, a body which is designed to elevate, to empower, but also to be the guardians of the teaching profession. We speak passionately. In many circles, we hear talking about the professionalization of teaching. So how is that done by non-professionals? The Nurses Association is one body. If you go to the lawyers, all lawyers. The nurses have a significant monopoly over it. But when it gets to teachers, for some reason we are told that there are many stakeholder groups. Now this is out of step with what we would consider the actual template that we see across many professional organizations within Jamaica. And the question is, why are the teachers being singled out? What is the motive? And so I have some questions. Why should the board of the council to regulate teaching profession be dominated by non-teachers? Why should the teachers as professionals be treated differently from other professional councils which are established and governed as such professions? We need answers to these questions. Let us once again reiterate the point that we are in support of the idea of the bill and the professionalization of the service. That is not the issue. The issue is in how it is being operationalized through the bill. The quorum of 7 non-educators will be able to take critical decisions about teachers and education. And I put that in context. There is no provision which ensures that the council could not be called in the absence of our 6 representatives. And so there is a possibility sometime in the future, if this bill passes, that you could have a sitting of the council. 11. Yes? Sorry, 11, right. A sitting of the body, and you would end up with individuals all being seated in that council meeting, and not one is a teacher. That is dangerous.
Very, very, very.
We could have not one single member of the JTA, the body that represents teachers, present. That is dangerous. And so we have to be mindful. Again, we are not seeking to stop the bill. And I'm going at great pains to underscore this because this is a narrative that seems to be peddled by some, within our media landscape and even in certain parts of social media. There is no contradiction here. You said that, how is it possible that the JTA at this time is raising objection? Again, a fallacy. We have been raising concerns about this bill for decades.
20 years.
As is clear, and I have the evidence here. Here are 2 submissions that were made. One in 2014 and the other in 2022. 2022 with Mr. Doran Dixon, another past president, who is present. And Nicely, Dr. Nicely, also being present. Marching on, raising issue. We have had our immediate past president, Mr. Leighton Johnson, delivering a letter, sending a letter to the then minister, raising concerns. Virtually at every meeting we asked about it, and we are assured people took umbrage with my comments about betrayal. But as we've done consultations across the island, many of our teachers feel betrayed.
Yes.
I want us to zero in on the issue of registration. The powers of the council to register, license, and grant authority to teach are established in the statutes below. The process of registration and licensing of the estimated 25,000 public school teachers, and then another possible 2,000 plus other teachers within the private system, we believe will create a great stress on the bureaucracy in order to effectively manage. We believe that great consideration must be thought or placed into thinking about how we will treat with this. You can imagine, with our existing capacity to generate police records, an additional 25,000 would be required. We must not go down the road of creating laws that we cannot enforce.
Chaos.
Colleagues, the cost, this will cost the country a great amount of additional resources and revenue that will have to be earmarked now for the process of licensing of teachers. Now, if the government is able to find it along with the 280 billion needed for the transformation, I have no problem. Obviously, we have some way of funding this, but we believe fundamentally this must not be on the backs of our teachers. The truth is, colleagues, the cost associated with running this massive apparatus will be equivalent to having a Ministry of Education duplicated. Because not only will the council deal with licensing as many professional bodies, but within its articles, within the various structures of the bill, you will see where they want to take on the role of to conduct professional appraisals. This is usually the remit of a school board and administrators of the respective schools. Why would we want to duplicate this process? That would come with a bill. And we have to be prepared to understand that we cannot go down this road. It is not in the best interest. Not when many of our schools, the infrastructure is ailing. We look at many of our institutions, the roofs are falling apart. Termites are eating down virtually every part of the institution. We have a lack of teaching resources in many schools. And we're going to take the money and shift that money that should be impacting the quality of instruction to our children. I think that this has not been carefully thought out. Again, we have raised this matter. I am one of many presidents, a long line of presidents, that raised issue with this bill. I see Ms. Nadine Malloy, principal of Shorewood College, president, and she, being a past president, also had her time raising concerns about this bill. The policymakers have not taken our recommendations. Yeah. And so there is a need for us to fix the bill. This issue of appraisal continues to be one that we find deeply troubling. When you check with many of the existing professional bodies, we spoke to some of my colleagues that are there, and they indicated that their appraisals are not supervised or there's any oversight or engagement or any conducting of appraisal by any of those bodies. But for some reason, the council decides to want to take on this expanded role. I think we have to be careful. We are literally asking for consideration that moves beyond just thinking about what we have said towards actioning what we consider critical components of this bill that need to be amended.
Fix the bill. Fix the bill.
Now we move to the idea of teaching without registration or licensing. Now it is critical that we understand that the proposed fine appears disproportionately high. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act, individuals found transporting large sums of money, for instance, can be fined $250,000. Not exceeding $250,000, thank you. But for a teacher who is found to be working without a license, teaching without a license, they can be charged up to $500,000. A trained teacher. If we look at our good friends and colleagues, our nurses, we're advised that nurses in their first offense can be fined $200,000. The second offense, $400,000. But nobody, in all fairness, we have seen that happen. In fact, what we see as a practice is that the nurses get $1,000 a day. They're charged for every day that they are not licensed. The employer is charged $1 million. Who are the public teachers employed?
Yeah.
A teacher cannot pay themselves.
Exactly.
And so when you, again, we talk about the inconsistencies within this act.
Incomplete.
It does not in any way take into account the precarious position we find ourselves in as a country.
Teacher migration.
Go Public Fund Education Campaign. We have been seeking to raise the country's awareness to the tsunami that is coming of teachers that are leaving the island in ever increasing numbers. And while we see a lot going on in North America that many pundits point to and say, our teachers will not leave because of the administration presently in the White House. The truth is, it is not only the United States that we must fear, because there are other jurisdictions that are increasing their pull on our existing stock of teachers. There is approximately 44 million teachers that are needed worldwide. Now we have to be careful about the arduous systems that we are attempting to establish that will further place pressure on our existing teacher. Principals are presently struggling to identify teachers. When you get into areas, particularly special, we talk a lot about STEM. We articulate a lot about pushing towards developing more STEM-based programs. Where will we get these STEM teachers? We already have an existing shortage. And presently, I can tell you that in many cases, we've had to go and engage individuals to come in and assist us. The mechanic down the road to come in and assist us. That individual will now need to get an authorization to teach. Or they will not be able to assist at all. The past student who comes back and gives a couple of days, that person will need to be licensed. And again, we are concerned that within the present landscape and the context of where we are as a country, the timing is not right. These fundamental issues must be tackled. Teachers are, under our system, employed to the schools. While the bill does not remove the power of the boards, the council assumes greater powers of discipline, even to taking over the matters already before the board or those matters that the board has already treated with. The council, pursuant to the disciplinary hearing, has the power to suspend registration authority to teach, suspend and or revoke a teacher's license. We are concerned again.
Kangaroo court. Victimization.
So it is quite possible we will see under this bill, if it is passed into law, the retrying of a teacher that would have been brought before a school board and or a magistrate's court. Under this existing piece of legislation before, or the bill that is being piloted, it is quite possible that you would have a matter that would have been treated and settled, reopened by the council. Read the bill. I implore my colleagues, read the bill. Well-thinking Jamaicans, read the bill. The bill needs to be fixed. We call upon the government to fix the bill.
Fix the bill.
What also greatly concerns us is a principle we have embraced since our independence. The concept of natural justice under our constitution.
Due process.
Due process. Under the existing bill that is being piloted through it has passed the upper house on its way through or to be tabled in the lower house. It allows for a teacher to have their case be tried before the actual council, and during that period, there is no provisions made for that teacher to be able to teach. So it's a suspension of your license. You're not allowed to teach. It's not an interdiction. Once it is that your license is suspended, you cannot teach. Hence, loss of revenue.
Not time specific.
There is no structures in terms of it being time specific. It almost implies that there's a presumption of guilt, and that is an antecedent to how it is that we operate. It is counter to the very principle of how it is natural justice is expected to be practiced. The bill in its present form transgresses both the education regulations and the labor code. As a result, if you are very familiar with it, what it means is that this bill, when made law, or if made law, will mean it will supersede many of the statutes and existing structures within existing bills, including the regulation, the code of regulation, the labor codes. And we are concerned about
Data
this.
protection and child care protection.
Thus, the bill will compromise procedural fairness, as we say, natural justice. By this, the bill separates standards of justice are established for teachers with encroachment on basic human rights. The enactment of this law will reduce the power of school boards and undermine their rights to disciplining their employees, the teachers. We further believe that if you look at this bill in its totality, it is of grave concern to us. The rabbit hole will begin to go down if this bill is made into law in its present iteration. And so, when you start to look at the idea that an individual could possibly be convicted previously of a matter, be cleared of that matter, and then the council deciding that for some reason you were involved with marijuana at some earlier period in your life, and you have a full recovery, or you have rehabilitated under this existing law. The provision is clear that the council holds the right to then bar you, because that would fall under one disqualifiers. There's a long list of disqualifiers. I took the opportunity to go through that, those that occur for the those that exist for the nurses as well, and it's quite expansive. Without a doubt, the one that has been laid out is very troubling for us as a union. I want us also to understand that there are serious legal issues that we believe that will exist or come to the fore as a result of the passage of this bill. And based on our position as a union, again, we support the intent of the bill, but we assert that there can be no regulation without effective representation. Once again, it is far too bureaucratic in its structure, and it will impose a greater burden on our teachers or the regulatory framework and the council, which has been tasked with administering these duties. Colleagues, we have to be careful that in one breath we are attempting to improve the professional perception, the perception of the profession, while in the same breath we are seeking to criminalize individuals who are teachers.